Hello and welcome back, everybody. I am not Aaron Knoll, clearly. I am Noah McCausland, or it's just allergies, as my nickname is today. Um, I'm hosting because Aaron is a very busy man, and sometimes he just needs a break. And I'm happy to help and step in and run this and make this a shit show and a nightmare for Aaron to have to edit in the future. So, Aaron, this is for you. Um, I'm going to try to make this as difficult as possible. Everyone watching, hopefully it's entertaining at least. That being said, we have a very interesting match today. We have two competitors who have a not even very similar record, an identical record. Um, they both have struggled, but also have found some victories and found some wins and have those under their belts. Um, but I think we should just get into it. I don't really have much to say, just like getting to the point. So, introducing first, with a record of 2-3, with one knockout, we have Zachary Shelton. Zachary, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm looking forward to debating these interesting questions and looking to have some fun.
Well, I didn't write the question, so you can't blame me at all. So, but that being said, you're returning following a very important win. This match is very important in determining who gets a tournament spot or not. So, how do you feel with that on the line tonight?
Um, uh, I don't want to focus on that too much. I mean, that's great to have. My big focus is I'm coming off of a win, and I just want to continue that win streak.
Oh, sounds good to me. Anything else to say before I bring it to the back?
Uh, let's just have a great match.
Sounds good. And then bringing in his opponent with also a record of 2-3 and one knockout, we have Jonathan Peck, the phenomenal one. I'm sorry about that. The phenomenal one, Jonathan Peck. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah, that's fair. Uh, Doing very good. Doing very good. It's a 2-3 record and might be misleading to some people, and because I'm thinking, but some of the losses, I will argue, they're more like by 1 point scored preference, point score possessions, basically. I'm using a little sports term lyrics here. So it means like I got to very close matches, even though some of the losses are by 1 point scores, and at least I need to still work harder on with it to try. Currently, right now, getting like a 500 record at least, or maybe some hope to a miracles by trying to get a tournament spot. And I think it's very important. I'm very intrigued how Zachary's going to do, and I did some research on his past matches, so I'm very intrigued how he's going to do throughout this matchup. And I got my answers and notes there to kind of help me out and some studies and movies in the last couple of days and weeks to prepare for this match.
Well, awesome. It sounds like you both are ready to go. So why not just get this party started? Movie Battleground is a best of 5 rounds. The first player to 3 points wins the match. Each round is worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to get 3 points in a row, that's going to be considered a win by knockout, something that both of these gentlemen are familiar with. And a tie after round 4 is going to activate the dreaded round 5, otherwise known as the blind round. In terms of our matches and the rounds themselves, rounds 1 through 4, stage 1 is going to be a 60-second opening, followed by a 2-minute solo pitch where they're going to have a chance to kind of dive further into their argument. And then we have the 4-minute open debate, which is always a pleasure to watch, but not be in, as both of these competitors will go head to head with each other and see who gets it. And last but not least, they're going to finish off with a 60-second closing argument to kind of wrap up all their uh, their thoughts and arguments together. That being said, 1982 is a year in which cinema is. I didn't do research and don't have really much to connect it to anything currently going on today. With that being said, the question is, what is the best franchise release franchise entry, sorry, released in the year 1982. And these gentlemen have both picked interesting answers. I'll say that for the least, and I'll just let them get into it. Um, Behind the scenes, Jonathan is the favorite, and he chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. And so Zachary will go first on questions 2 and 4. So with that being said, let me just bring this in. If you guys are ready, Jonathan, I'll let you answer. When you begin speaking, the timer will start as well.
1982 is not only sort of a great year of science fiction films in general, but also a great year for movies in general. Even sequels to movies that to a film that, well, though not great as their first entry, but the second entry basically elevates some of the setbacks and problems of the first film and elevate it to a degree. I'm picking Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And the reason why I picked that entry is sort of the best entry around that time period because it sort of fixes, so some people have issues when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in 1979 when it was more slow pace and a little more plotting this time. And the reason why I picked The Wrath of Khan in general because I think without this movie, not only we don't have Star Trek right now, we have as we speak, and we don't have even some science fiction films is some influence by the Wrath of Khan itself. And by I'll explain more details when I get to the main argument. So I'm going. A certain Trekkie has claimed that this movie is the Citizen Kane of Star Trek movies, and basically, and I'll concede the rest of my time with my argument for Star Trek 2.
All right, we have Star Trek 2. And with that being said, Zachary, the time goes over to you. Your time will begin whenever you start speaking.
So I will agree that 1982 was a great year, and I'll also agree with Noah that we have an interesting debate on our hands because my choice is Grease 2. So I feel like this movie brings a lot to the table. It has some great characters. It has a lot of catchy songs. And what also elevates those songs is they're done in unique locations. And along with that, you get to see Michelle Pfeiffer in her first lead role, and you get to see how she kind of grows and develops in this movie. And I'll explain more in my 2 minutes.
Well, all right, I'm going to let the timer run down. And Jonathan, it's going to be right back over to you whenever whenever you start speaking.
So I had chosen Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan because not only is it a great Star Trek movie by everyone else, but it just is a great movie in general. It shows you basically the characters from the Enterprise that basically right now Admiral Kirk right now is sort of thinking sort of the first time ever, sort of the past is coming back to haunt him, and not only talk about sort of immortality, great themes behind it, sort of like basically sometimes a little wild Lucy days and maybe far behind him, and you got to think of what's sort of behind instead. It also sort of something just kind of bites him in the ass, but that's what Khan showed up, playing manfully gratefully by Ricardo Montalban from the episode with Star Trek with the Great Seed, and basically brought in this movie not only amazing present for people who it's not only the movie is a great film, but it was also a great introduction for people who hadn't introduced Star Trek at this point. Like even you don't have to watch the motion picture and go straight for this movie and basically get what Khan is basically by knowing even without the proper knowledge in the original series. And this film it really shows you a great, very earthquake yet heartwarming theme in the movie, basically about mortality and move on and themes behind it, kind of like how much you're sort of like, why does it feel like I'm being young again? Or basically, how does it feel we lost that sort of youth and that type of thing? And I love when the movie brings in that theme of why is sort of like basically not only in the past basically bites you in the ass, or also is like basically gonna come back to haunt them from the Lucian period. Kind of like Kurt had to sort of We United a Son Who Rarely He Never Know, actually, by Carol Marcus. It really brings like this like very much like dread throughout the movie progress. So when I get the main debate on there, which I think, let's be honest, like with Grease 2, we all have a good laugh of it. So I'll explain why there. So that was my opening pitch.
Time. All right, Zach. Time goes back over to you whenever you begin speaking.
So I want to dive more into the characters, and for basically in two different ways. I feel like one thing that definitely helps this movie is that while you do have your two main characters in Michael and Stephanie, you are able to get moments with the other characters. You're able to understand more of the personalities of the T-Birds with their song Prowlin'. You are able to get more personalities also with the Pink Ladies in Score Tonight. But also, along with that, along with those characters, you do get more of a, like I said, a growth and development, especially with Stephanie, where she goes from this hard-nosed leader of the Pink Ladies to experiencing love and loss, and then able to find a way back to the man of her dreams. So it's like you get all those ups and downs, and like I said, with the songs, you do get some unique locations as well. You get reproduction. It's kind of like a school lesson, but in musical form. You also get "Let's Do It for Our Country" in a bunker. And the other thing is, I feel like it takes a little while to really get going in Star Trek 2. As soon as you hear "Back to School Again" from the Four Tops at the beginning of Grease 2, that is such a energetic song that just gets you right into this movie. And I'll expand more onto it in the 4 minutes. So I'll see the rest of my time.
All right. That being said, Zach said it. It's going to go into the open debate. So both of you gentlemen knows what that means. Whenever any of you begin speaking, I'll start the timer for you.
Okay. Look. I know basically if you put Grease 2 as like a fun, so bad it's good movie on there, probably you might win that debate. But let's be real. You think best entry of a franchise? Like, first of all, Grease itself, it should have never been a franchise to begin with. The reason it made a franchise because it made a crap ton of money in 1978 and highest at Paramount around that time. And basically, if you want to do a sequel to that movie, where's Danny Zuko and Sandy after the first movie, after driving off into the during after the fair? Why were we trying to focus on that movie instead? Basically, like mainly almost nobody's basically throughout the not even was on the original film, except for one or two characters, even damage to short stride halfway through. And basically the characters from the musical numbers are very forgettable. Your main lead itself, it basically looks like a nerd in the movie, which I have no seen as a nerd in the movie. You're just like a more Tupperistic guy, it was no nerd. And basically just the reason why more talked about with Grease 2 is because how bad it is, basically. None of the numbers have felt interesting. The original director of Grease basically does not want anything to do with it. And even the original creator of the Grease musical itself proud to disown this movie. And basically it just never felt anything sort of resembled with it.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to pause the time right here. You've been monopolizing the time for over about a minute now. I'm going to ask that you guys keep your points to short. All right.
Sorry, my bad. Oops.
All right. I'm going to resume in 3, 2, 1.
What I will have to say, because you asked where are Sandy and Danny, basically you find out that this movie takes place 4 years after they graduated, and Michael is the cousin of Sandy, who was told how great Rydell High is. So you're kind of continuing that along with bringing in some of the old characters, but also continuing the whole T-Birds and Pink Ladies thing. One thing that I kind of have issue with your movie is I feel like the hidden sun storyline, I felt like it was kind of unnecessary and it could have been taken out and the movie would have been the exact same. So I feel like you had moments in here that was just kind of unneeded.
I disagree with that respectfully because, like, you felt like you needed that some sort of point where Kirk's thing to do. It's basically sort of looking through from the past and sort of looking within. It's like I had a son I rarely know about, and basically try to be sort of the father who I need to be. So at the end of the movie, is sort of starting through that. And I mentioned about the sort of the themes of basically the past coming back to haunt them. It's sort of like when you try to be more having more in the future. Even throughout the beginning of the movie, when Bones visited Kirk in his apartment, that's all these displays of walls of basically on Moby Dick and basically things a lot of seriously literature things. It's a metaphor that what Kirk is sort of his sort of mortality and some of the best elements in Star Trek throughout those scenes, even tiny moments of the film. But that's where Nicholas Meyer did a great job and not only characterizing those moments, but also brings like more very ethical, yeah, heartwarming theme along with it, especially with the end. And we didn't even expect like Spock to die throughout the movie, and Spock is not necessarily the main character of the film. And when it happens, it's like, whoa, like I didn't see
Yeah,
that coming. I don't think.
the other thing I'll say is that I feel like your film, yes, the main focuses are Kirk and Khan, but I feel like nobody else really is given like huge moments. Yes, you have Kirstie Alley and yes, you have Spock, but they're mostly kind of in the background. Whereas I feel like I said with mine, you at least you get songs and you get some scenes where you get to learn more about these characters in Grease 2 as opposed to your movie.
Grease 2. What are the characters' name again? Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know any of the characters' name, even the ones that are very forgettable and nothing.
And time. All right, gentlemen, that was a great open debate. Just a reminder for the future ones: make sure to keep your points and
All
short and don't monopolize the time. Thank you, Jonathan.
right. I'll keep that in
With
mind.
that
Sorry
being
about that.
said, Jonathan, it's going to go back to you though for your final closing minute whenever you begin speaking.
My final thoughts on Star Trek 2 is basically with this. I think this movie kind of proves, even with a limited budget compared to the first one they got, they basically have a great compelling story, great compelling film, and a great and a dreaded theme, and not only Khan's the villain, but the sort of more the need of the Genesis project. And the end I just mentioned with Spock's death, even thought at the beginning of the movie, like they just kill him off. It's like, oh, nothing's gonna happen, everything's gonna be all fun and dandy. But it turned out when he's actually dead, it's like, oh, I'm not gonna come back for this. And basically, sort of like matches one of my theme about the movie is sort of more immortality. Like, was it feeling being young? And in the end of the movie, where Kirk said, I just feel like we're young again. It sort of reflects throughout the movies, matches throughout the movie perfectly well. Star Trek 2 throughout the run, and also sort of the best entry from that franchise for Trekkies or non Trekkies to this day. And that's the reason it claims the Citizen King of Trek films. Where Grease 2 is just really a sequel to a franchise movie that
Yeah,
now needs to be a franchise. A franchise.
strike that from the record. Just
Sorry.
kidding. Zachary, back over to you whenever you begin speaking.
So, I think Grease 2 is, in my opinion, is the best answer for this question because I feel like it brings a lot to this that actually, in my opinion, actually elevates the original Grease. You have some great original characters that get their own moments. You get some growth and development with both Stephanie and Michael, who goes from a nerd to a motorcycle rider and is just this tough guy. But you also are immediately put into the movie at the very beginning. In my opinion, I feel like with Star Trek 2, it really doesn't pick up until the Reliant and Enterprise first interact. And along with those, that is why I feel like this is the best answer.
And time. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead and move you to the back and bring in our lovely judges. know if I introduced them in the beginning of this, but we do have Maria, Alejandro, and everyone's favorite dad, Jake Tato.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
Can we call you Daddy?
Oh, I gotta leave. I gotta go. Nope. I don't do fact checking because I'm not Aaron. Just like I think was Austin Howell said that in one of his matches that he hosted.
I am also of that school of hosting.
Yeah, I don't feel like doing that. Aaron can do that because he likes doing that. This is his show. I'm tired. It's past my bedtime. With that being said, judges, as precisely as you can put it, who won the point for you and why? Maria, we're going to go to you first.
Well, I'll cut to the chase. Whoops, or not. Jonathan wins, in my opinion. He had some good arguments. He had some not so great ones, too, about Citizen Kane being... Please don't say it's Citizen Kane. I can't stand Citizen Kane. But anyway, I agree with about Grease 2. Unnecessary movie. I like Maxwell Caulfield, but that's about it. There are no catchy songs. I don't even remember the name of one of them. And I think Wrath of Khan, he brought up a lot of good points. I did think he missed the nostalgic part of what that might have been to everybody, but I think overall his arguments were better about iconic movies.
Okay, thank you. Alejandro, we're going to go over to you. Who gets the point and why?
Yeah, this was actually a really, really good argument. I do think Zach had some good polls for Grease too that I wouldn't have even thought of, like well-developed side characters with the Pink Ladies and the T-Birds, the songs being in unique locations like Prowl and Reproduction, Let's Do It. Back to School is an energizing opening, but even as a musical theater fan, like Grease 2 is not memorable at all. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan is considered among Star Trek fans to be one of the best. So yeah, Jonathan definitely gets my point. Even though, like you said, yeah, he took a whole lot of that open debate, man.
Thank you very much, judges. Tato will get to you in the next one. For right now, we're going to put you right back where you belong, in the back. Bring our competitors right back in. Great match, great first round with the both of you. But we get into an interesting question. DreamWorks has had some success lately with the release of Puss in Boots: Last Wish. That was very popular and gained traction very fast. And in my life, I heard a lot about it from my friends and the people that I talked to about movies, even though I still haven't seen it yet. They've done a lot of good work when it comes to How to Train Your Dragon. Everyone says that trilogy is doing amazing. And while Shrek has their ups and downs, they do tend to at least be entertaining. But we're not arguing about what's entertaining or what's even the best. This question is, what is the worst franchise made by DreamWorks Animation? And funny enough, these gentlemen have both picked duo questions, so movies that only have 2 entries in those franchises. And with that being said, Zachary, because you are going on first on this question because Jonathan went first on the last one. So with that being said, I'm to the back, and I'll begin your timer whenever you start speaking.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you my answer right away. My answer is the Boss Baby franchise. So you could have a movie that has a great plot, but it has a horrible execution. And this franchise is the perfect example of that. This movie, at least in the first one, is all over the place. You could have had just a simple sibling rivalry story and it could have been interesting, but then you have to throw in just a villain and the brothers teaming up to save their worlds, if you want to say it like that. And I'll get more into why this is a horrible franchise in my 2 minutes.
All right. I'll play just a second. Jonathan, it's going to go right back over to you for your 1 minute opening when you begin speaking.
So I'm gonna pick this franchise. It also has 2 films. It basically sort of like kind of more unnecessary ones, and I think like when it's more unnecessary, it would just not only one forgettable first movie, and the second one was pretty much awful. I'm picking Spirit, and the reason I said Spirit because for those who don't know what Spirit is, and some people's like, "What?" I was like, "Exactly because Spirit of the Cimarron." The first movie itself, which started during that period when DreamWorks is basically trying to do his little 2D animated films, but even the point in like the early 2000s started died a bit fading out, and this was sort of the last attempt to try to do that before they switched out the all 3D animation along with it. And well, basically there are some neat ideas. I don't think fully execution very well of it, so I'll explain more details when I get to the main argument. I'm picking the Spirit duo for one forgettable first movie and one terrible sequel.
All right.
I can see.
Let's run down a little bit. Zachary, it's going to go back right over to you. 2 minutes whenever you begin speaking.
Okay, so let's talk about the relationships in both of these movies. The relationship between Tim and the boss baby, otherwise known as Ted in the sequel, it's not believable in any way. They never seem like they are really connected at all. Meanwhile, in Spirit, you have so many great relationships. You have the relationships between the various horses. You have the relationship between Spirit and the Colonel, and even Spirit and the Indians. And then you also in the sequel get the little girl and Spirit as well. It's like they are very fleshed out relationships that make you really hone into these movies. And also, I just feel like another thing is you can really get invested in the main character of Spirit and in the story of those movies. In my opinion, neither of the main characters in the Boss Baby franchise are ones that you really care about. In my opinion, the best character that has the most personality of anybody is Wizzy, who is a wizard alarm clock that was given some great dialogue and some interaction with Tim. But other than that, it's like all the rest of the characters are just kind of there. Along with it, the sequel is god awful of the Boss Baby, and in my opinion, is just so unnecessary and could have not been a thing.
And time. Thank you very much. We're going to go right back over to Jonathan for your 2 minutes whenever you begin speaking.
So my thing I mentioned earlier in my opening debate about Spirit is basically I felt like that was sort of the last few attempts by DreamWorks of basically trying to save like the 2D animation style around the early 2000s, and well, their success with Shrek, they care basically the idea of it, and I think not only did not do well at the box office, it just didn't do critically when it came out though because the story itself it's sort of very basic and not interesting halfway through. Because, and yes, sure, something you just mentioned is like, okay, yeah, it's cool, but even some other movies before or even after Spirit did a little bit similar like that, but did a whole lot better. Like, basically, a horse or animal basically trying to go home with his pack, basically. I've seen that movie before way more than that. Or basically, a man who basically relates with an animal, basically, again, sort of like in similar struggles. I've seen that movie 1,000 times. So basically, it's just very predictable. It's more of a story, and the pacing along with it, it drags some points, and it shows halfway through. Basically, we just never have some more interest in Spirits, the horse itself, even with a sort of a narration by Matt Damon, even though he's not really the voice, or just narration, even though not really, just mainly his thoughts. Like, it felt like if you were trying to do a sort of voice like that, it would either make voice the main character to do it, or basically don't do it at all. I felt like they couldn't have a good middle ground at one point. And also, there are more songs in the movie, too many Brian Adams songs for its own good, even more tense moments that were trying to be more subtle about. It doesn't do well at all. I think it's really tried too hard, basically, to basically like more what Disney's doing like a couple years earlier, but it just failed miserably at it. And I mean, even with the sequel, though, even had some little talking horses a little time. Even then, it was just very forgettable and a more unnecessary idea with Boss Baby. At least with Boss Baby made money and people at least during liked it well enough. So at least compared to my franchise, it's just not more unnecessary. It's just really uninteresting.
And time. Thank you very much. All right. Now we're about to get into our 4-minute open debate. Just remember the kind of like the parameters and rules that I've set before now, and
Right.
just not to monopolize the time and to let everyone speak. That being said, whenever someone does begin speaking, I'll start the timer for you.
Here, I'll go first this time. One thing that you keep bringing up is about the look of the movie and the animation. I actually completely disagree with you about Spirit. There are two words that come to mind after I watched this movie, and that was awe-inspiring and majestic. You really feel like you are there, and it just has that great look to it. Whereas the other DreamWorks movies, they all kind of look the same. And then in the sequel, it's another form of like that modern animation that again sets it apart from the other DreamWorks movies. So that's why I feel like it is better than the Boss Baby.
Look, when I mentioned about you just said something based about my Spirit sequel though, look like different animation. Well, the thing is, that was a kind of like a TV level of animation. Even you don't want to do with a high budget animation film, basically in theaters along with it. And the thing I keep saying about, well, you have pretty animation. Well, yeah, it's true though, but you know who has pretty animation in the movie itself? It's just meh, the good dinosaur, very great animation, movie itself. Meh. It basically that's my thing with Spirit though. If they had the ingredients that made Suicide maybe great ways something special with it because it didn't have basically had that real oomph feel to it than I think it was. I didn't feel real emotion, even Spirit or even that other human character along with it, even though in their journeys. It just didn't felt a little empty inside of it. At least with Boss Berry though, I felt even that then, even that more poop humor. But let's be honest, if you do like baby toe humor, you usually get all that stuff. But even then, it was watchable. Even with the kid and maybe the Boss Baby itself, though, basically at least having some rivalries and even sometimes just hanging each other along with it.
Yeah, I just again there was really nothing in the Boss Baby that really elevated it. It definitely seemed like it was just there to be a cash grab. I mean, if you really wanted to make it a good movie, you could have at least included some comedy other than just like poop and fart jokes, which is kind of outdated even at that time. And I just felt like there was more brought to the table with Spirit. I know you mentioned Brian Adams and the songs. Those are good songs, at least for that movie. But also, you have an amazing score that just is there throughout, and it really elevates the story as it goes along with what you see with Spirit and with the Indian people and with Colonel. It all elevates everything in that movie.
What I mean by like baby here, and I can think of a few parts. Some of the cleverness of the Boss Baby is basically he's like a businessman, but he's a baby doing it. It's sort of like I know it's sort of taboo to say this, but it's sort of you know who as a quote unquote baby along with it. And I'm thinking about that. It's kind of funny itself along with it. And basically at least it does have more of a heart to it, even though it's not like standard to others, but at least it was point. At least with Spirit for me, I never felt that basically throughout the two films. Even with the sequel set in like in the 90s, basically trying to do it like with the little girl, it just presently does nothing. Like even they were trying to go like some talking horses in the background. It's like, what is this? Like, why does it feel a little cheap by look though. Even by look standards, it just didn't even match and compute it very well. So, and that's my thing. Just with this movie, it just does 100% work.
All right, I guess that's going to be time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Zachary, it's going to go right back over to you for your 1 minute whenever you begin speaking.
So the reason I think The Boss Baby is the worst franchise is because especially with the first movie, the execution is just horrible because it's just all over the place and they just threw whatever they wanted at the screen just to make money. And it doesn't have any of the relationships in there. It doesn't have any investment in the characters or the story. And even with the sequel, it is just very unnecessary. With Spirit, though, it has an amazing look to it. It has great relationships, both animal to animal and animal to human. And it has an amazing score. And the sequel actually does bring some things to it, like a rescue story and a fish out of water story combined into one.
All right, that will be your time. Jonathan, it's going to go right back over to you for your closing minute.
So my thing with Spirit, my final thoughts on it, it's like I thought the movie was trying to do like a certain way, like I mentioned earlier about is it really Matt Damon's voice really the voice of the horse, or eventually just really a narration? It just never found a good bit between to try to do it, and also the Byron Allen songs are basically sort of distracting. It kind of takes you out of the movie when in those sort of emotional moments. And even songs like "Well, Good on Its Own," it just didn't feel the vibe of the movie what they're trying to do. Like even with the sequel. You mentioned sort of the rescue storyline, and basically, it just never felt anything like that. Even the sequel looks is very cheap on the budget, basically. So it's like straight like a direct to VOD movie, basically. Even some from one of those kids Netflix shows. It just never felt anything to a sequel. Just none that's unnecessary. Like, do we even want this to begin with? So it just felt like to a sequel to a movie, just boring, forgettable, and just kind of mediocre in general. At least with Boss Baby, though, at least it made money. At least some people liked it enough. It's like, okay, I might see how it goes. So,
And time.
Right.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I apologize. I feel like I haven't been as quick on the draw. It's because my allergies are killing me. I've been sneezing, if you can't tell. That being said, we're going to drop you guys to the back. We're going to bring in our judges and drop the timer because that's awkward. And Aaron's going to help me. So with that being said, got nothing for you. So Alejandro, we'll go to you first. Who gets your point and why?
Well, this was way more even. Great job, guys. And this is kind of apt because both of the competitors kind of spoke about the first movies and not so much the sequels, because I saw the first entry of both of these movies and skipped the sequels. So this was a pretty even match to me. In the end, I did go with Movie Z only because a lot of Jonathan's attacks on Spirit seemed to be on the animation, like it was the last ditch of 2D animation. It was a TV level animation movie, and Zach countered that perfectly, I think, by saying that all 3D DreamWorks animated movies look alike, which I think is absolutely true. Plus, Jonathan complaining about there being too much music and the score, stuff like that, was a weird complaint that I think Zach also countered perfectly. So yeah, Zach's getting my point on that one.
All right, thank you. Tater, we're going to go right back over to you, right over to you first, because we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, I got Zach on this one. They both did a pretty solid job at dumping on their movies, but Zach did a really great job of raising Spirit up, saying like throwing the score is good, the characters are great, the relationships are great, it's majestic and unique. So Zach gets it there.
All right, thank you very much, judges. We'll drop you to the back. And we have a match on our hands because we have a 1-1 score. It's perfectly tied up right now. Anything can happen. It's very interesting right now. Hope you guys are sweating because I am, because it's like 75 degrees in my house right now. With that being said, we have a viewer submitted question. And if you are interested in submitting any of your answers, you can email Aaron Knoll, which that's going to be right there at the bottom. So if you want any of your questions in any of the matches, if you have a really interesting question about film, about genres, directors, actors, years in cinema, anything at all, go ahead and give an email to that guy right there. And I know he says they might be closed right now, but email him anyway because he can always use the questions. So with that being said, we're going on to a viewer question, which was submitted by our very own Austin Howell. And that question is, what is the best twist ending in a film released in the 1990s? Now, these gentlemen, in my personal opinion, have picked some very good answers, so it's up to our judges to figure out which ones are the best. So, with that being said, Jonathan, we're going to go right back over to you. And your time will begin, not right now, but whenever I rewind the timer and whenever you begin speaking.
Before I start, I just want to say spoiler for both our movies. Just want to get that out of our chest. And basically, mine twist ended in the 90s, and not only Elva was already a great movie before the twist happened, it also took all-time classic status throughout the 90s. And I'm talking about the twist ending of the killers in Scream. And what I mean by twist is not only one killer, but two. And the reason I said that because it's sort of a creative way how the killer's about it, basically. It's sort of like you think you know, but you don't know in general. And the reason I brought it to Ascending itself, it really brings like sort of fits the movie's theme of a meta narrative of horror films in general. It's like, who is the killer? Who is the killer? Or who would defend that guy? Well, scratch that. That guy is the killer. So basically aligns with the details. So I'll explain more details when I get to the main argument. So my twist ending pitch is Screams. Casino my time.
All right. I'll let the timer run out there for a little bit. And Zachary, it's going to go right back over to you whenever you begin speaking.
So my twist ending from the 90s is from The Usual Suspects. And basically this figure in the, this mythical figure, Kaiser Sose, who the detective is looking for, just happens to be the person who he's had with him the entire time in front of him for the entire movie. And I think what definitely helps with this has to do with casting, because you need a great cast to elevate and move you through this movie, because with great performances, you don't know which way that this movie is going and who could really be the killer in the end.
And that will be your time, sir. Jonathan, it's going to go right back over to you whenever you begin speaking.
So why I chose Scream this over Usual Suspects, because it's one of the more creative reveals, and not only in a horror film, but also reveals in even a movie in general. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's a really creative way to basically very change on the sort of kill right off his head. Because when we take a look, what people think when you saw the beginning of the movie, basically, like who is the sort of killer? Scenarios of the killer, who it is, basically. On basically Neil Prussia, Cindy's father, basically, since he was living on a business trip along with it. People think in those type of scenarios, basically, we thought it was Billy along with it. And basically, and first was like, okay, maybe my very suspect gets less than the cops, all that stuff. But then when the movie progresses, basically, and basically not only the killer came in when Billy's around, basically it stabs him and pretend he was sort of wounded or dead. It's like, oh, he's not the killer. And basically it's just like, oh, it's trying to be Cindy's dead this whole time, basically. But then going the other corner, it's like Cindy's tied up in the closet of the house. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's not the killer. And it's people think it was Kenny. It's like, wait a minute, he thought the killer? So basically, this whole time, it's like, wait a minute, how did they go this way? But then the movie brings this twist together, and then what's throughout this whole time, Billy not only stabs the whole thing, but shoots Kenny along with that. So he is the killer. Not only that, he has a second accomplice with his brother, Stu Loomis. Basically, all this goofy, going off character turned out he's the killer this whole time. Not only the person theory that not only there's one killer, but there are two killers, and they use it very maniacally in a way. And it helped elevate for a good film, and it's a great film, elevated. What I felt suspect, he sort of relies on the more the twist in it, but I'll get the main debate. Why is that? Over to you on mine.
All right, and that'll be your time. Zachary, it's going to go right back over to you for your 2 minutes whenever you begin speaking.
So I'm going to go back to casting in a way in terms of, so you find out that Kevin Spacey's character, Verbal Kint, is Kaiser Sose, but he's someone that you don't expect because everybody thinks that he's slow and that he has a limp, and just nobody wants him to go with them. So they think he's just an accessory and not one to really take seriously. But one thing that I think works with my movie is that you don't find out the plot twist ending until like the last 5 or 10 minutes, because it uses a lot of cunning, and it uses the use of your surroundings. And what you find out is that he uses names and places from a billboard that he's staring at the entire time to come up with this elaborate story. I think the problem with Scream, though, is outside of Sydney, the rest of the cast is kind of bland, and it's just like you don't really get invested to really keep up with who you want to know is the killer. And I think the other problem is that even if you had never seen this movie before, you kind of figure out who the killer or killers are within the first like 45 minutes. And there are some definite clues that I that came to me in that I'll explain in the next round that make it why it's easier to tell who the killers are in Scream.
All right, and that will be your time. Now we go right into the 4-minute open debate, which will begin whenever one of you begins speaking.
So here's your little problems or drawbacks with your twist in The Usual Suspects, though. Once we figure out it was Verbal Kint Kaiser Sose, I was like, okay, we kind of sort of predicted it on it. And some of the crew and the gang that Mr. Kint or basically or the rest of the crew just level together, it's like it's pretty much anybody you can pick out of that group. It's like, oh, that's Kaiser Sose. Along with it, it's sort of like a little bit more predictable. And then when the twist happens, like, oh, it's sort of scheming. And it's like, okay, all right. If you even go when we watch the movie, though, like basically it's like, okay, I can see what Kaiser Sose was actually doing. Even Verbal Kint even shot the guy in the parking lot along with it. And even some people might know it's like, oh, it might be Kaiser Sose this whole time. He's just basically on purpose, not by accident, though. Like, I felt like it was kind of take away to some of your twists in the movie, though. Like, even you're taking your twist out of The Usual Suspects, the film itself is basically just like a standard like crime thriller in the 90s around that time.
I'm going to go back on what you said. You kind of said that based on this lineup, that any one of them could be Kaiser Sose, and even the detective was believing in the like former police officer the entire time. So I think that actually works for casting because you have such great performances that you don't know who it really is. Now, kind of getting into my clues, though, for Stu, knowing how to gut somebody and going into detail, it's like that kind of was a weird thing to learn about.
So, well, But the thing about Stu is like basically we thought for majority of the movie he's more of a goofball. He's basically sort of the boyfriend to Cindy's friend. It basically sort of like wild comedic character. What we all know from Matt Myth and Lure is you didn't even expect it. Basically him, basically like a more like murderized sociopath. With a Kaiser Soze for Cam and Spacey, basically. Yeah, I can see that, but even play like Kaiser Soze along with it. Even before the twist, like I can sense a guy basically you could twist or someone stab behind people in the back, basically. So the twist on that isn't believable. With mine, basically, at least it's sort of like we can see it's coming. Not only Stu what pops up, but then I mentioned earlier with Billy along with it. Basically, it thought, oh, not only he sort of left, but he shoot Randy in the ankle along with it. And basically, it's like, holy crap! Not only there was one killer, but there are two along with it. It's like brain's like, what the hell's going on? It just like brings it like more dimension to a movie. Has already been great. It elevates to like classic status. That basically sort of meant well twist around the 90s. I kind of disagree with you. Basically, they're not memorable characters. There are more memorable characters. We know about Dewey. We know about Glare. And we don't know about Cindy along with it. With Suspects, I have them more than Kaiser Soze or Verbal Kid or even Muteta Killian. None of the sort of the characters sort of will stand out, even take the twist out of it.
Yeah, but that also brings me to more of the clues, like calling them or like we already knew that Billy was in the house when Sydney had her conversation with her dad, so he already knew that she was going to be home alone, so that made it perfect for him to stalk her. And then for Tatum, who is she in a relationship with? Stu. You know that Stu would know what her phone number was. So it's like, in that way, he knew to call because those two had talked about Sydney was going to be there.
So basically, this whole time, what do you know about Kaiser Soze, who were just basically sort of the group kidnapped with Kobayashi in the building, basically sort of gives this sort of look in the background along with it. It's just like pretend even to see or not of it. So don't act like my movie's doing it. With yours is sort of a similar thing along with it. With mine, it's more elevated than the movie has already been good to great. With yours, it's already been a well-regarded movie, even with the twist. Even without the twist, it just
and time. Thank you both, gentlemen. We're going to move on to Jonathan for your 1 minute closing argument.
So my final thoughts on Scream is basically what I mentioned this earlier, and I put it in my closing is you thought at first when Billy got stabbed for the first time, you thought Cindy's father is the killer along with it. Basically how they murdered their mother. That's a sort of a light bulb moment. But then when the film progresses, basically not only he gets tied up in the closet I just mentioned earlier, it just really not only that and not only Billy shoots shoots him, basically just like, oh, he's the killer. And then we reveal that Stu is the killer. Not only the brothers along with it, but basically they murdered Cindy's mom along with it. It's more of a twist up, fucked up idea. Basically, not only make the twist and also like, what the hell's going on? Is more leak you cold out of it. Even with Suspects, when Kaiser says it, this Kaiser says it, is like, all right, he basically fooled anyone this whole time. Big whoop. Basically, mine just leaves you chilled after you saw the twist happen.
And that will be your time. Zachary, back over to you for your 1 minute closing argument whenever you begin speaking.
So the reason I think that Usual Suspects works better is you have a cunning character in Verbal Kint, who turns out to be Kaiser Soze, who is able to use his surroundings and to make up an outlandish story to fool a detective. And that all has to do with casting. Like I said with Scream, outside of Sydney, everybody else is kind of bland. So it's just like I feel like they don't do as well to elevate the story. And the last thing I'm going to say is the final two hints that you kind of are able to tell very early on who the killers are is Stu having a house in the middle of nowhere seems suspicious. And anytime they panned to Billy's face, it just, you knew something was up with that guy. So for all those reasons, I think Usual Suspects.
And time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're going to drop you to the back and bring in our wonderful judges.
Aw.
who've been paying attention, hopefully. Tato, I'm going to go to you first this time. Who gets your point and why?
Ultimately, this one went to Peck. Very, very close. Heard a lot of the same points from both players. And in a question like this, I think that's kind of inevitable. So props to them for both fighting the best they can. Peck got it. He said, like, with being a little more creative and how the Billy stabbing fake out works is where Peck got it from me.
All right. We'll go right back down to you, Maria, who gets a point and why. And just so you know, you're muted right now.
That's unusual. I have, excuse me, a different opinion. I think Zachary won. I don't know where the emojis came from just when I turned it around. I thought his argument about Kaiser Sose was really good. I don't think that Jonathan really got to that in a way that would make me change my mind. So I think actually that one for me.
All right. And that means for the first time in this match, we'll go to you, Alejandro, for the tiebreaker. Who
I was
gets
about to say, this is the question that proves why these guys have an even record. And I agree with Tato, man. Like, they brought up a lot of the same points because they both essentially said that their twist ending of revealing the killer was the best of that. I don't know why Fight Club wasn't introduced. Not the question. Anyway, I think what ultimately put me over the edge was because a lot of the same points were made. Jonathan actually kind of tripped up a whole lot talking about that it's not a twist, even though it is a reveal of the killer, that he guessed the ending, but it could have gone either way. And I think Zach jumped on those perfectly. So I went with Zach on this one, too.
All right. Well, that being said,
It was that close, but for real.
So that brings Zach up 2-1 over Jonathan.
Alejandro, you think we're the same person?
I think we are, yeah. Are we both stoned right now? Probably.
Dang, I'm missing out.
Well, maybe you can get in there sometime. So we'll bring the competitors back in. So with this third question, not third question, we just did the third question. We're going to go into the fourth question. Mission Impossible has been anticipated for a while, the new installment, that is. I saw the clip with the whole Tom Cruise riding a motorcycle off of a cliff and everything and parachuting. I'm sure everyone has seen that at this point. But we're not talking about Mission Impossible. We're talking about what is the worst Tom Cruise performance. And with that being said, might as well just get right into it. So we're going to go right back over to Zach. Zach, the timer will begin whenever you start talking.
Okay, so my choice for the worst Tom Cruise performance is 2017's American Made. So with both of these choices, the one word I'm going to use is charisma. Now, Jonathan's choice, he has charisma, but he shows a lot more, like every other performance I've seen him in. The problem with American Made is that is all Tom Cruise has. It feels like he is it's very surface level, and he all he does is just show how charismatic he is without going any deeper into the character. And I will explain more of why this is not as great a performance in my 2 minutes. So I cede the rest of my time.
All right, and that'll be your time. We're going to go right back over. The heck? That was my cat. Sorry. We're going to go right back over to Jonathan. Jonathan, you got 1 minute on the clock whenever you begin speaking.
It's funny enough that Zach mentioned the charisma thing, but the thing with charisma, sometimes he elevates him so much okay and blandest movies or more ways than others. That's the reason I picked Lions for Lambs, basically some of his worst performances throughout his career, because I felt 2007 around the point. This is sort of his last peak. More trying to be grabbing the Oscar baity type of things, and it just kind of failed at it along the same time. And the movie itself, it's just boring and dull. And I felt like not only performance just fell flat, it's really one of the worst films that Repper's ever directed. It's just not good as his previous films like Ordinary People, for It, and Chris Show. It just felt like wasted brilliant cast, including Cruise, Meryl Streep, and even Repper himself. And I felt like this movie could have gone a lot of ways. Like could have been like a maybe more David Fincher directed, or even like Aaron Sorkin wrote this. Felt like it was just a pale rip-off version of that. We're trying to do something, but it's not. I'll explain more details why.
All right, and that'll be your time. Zach, right back over to you for your 2 minutes whenever you begin speaking.
So I'm not going to spend too much time on this point, but I do have to say that sometimes what does help a performance is if it's based off a real person, you kind of want to have the actor look a little bit more like him. And when you compare Tom Cruise with Barry Seal, who he plays in American Made, they don't look anything alike. And I just feel like if you had someone that looked more like Barry Seal, I feel like you could get more into the character. But one thing now, when it comes to Lions for Lambs, I think Tom Cruise is actually really good in this movie because he's only in about a third of the movie, but he has such a range of emotions in his performance that it actually elevates his scenes, but also it elevates the movie even more. And he's in scenes with Meryl Streep, and I just feel like the passion that he has even outdoes her part in this movie. And the last thing I'll say with that in terms of his performance is that you might not agree with what he is talking about in this movie, but he has such a presence and a passion in his role that you just want to listen to whatever he has to say. And I will see the last 15 seconds.
All right. If I heard correctly, you're yielding your time?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll wait until the timer runs down and just talk a little bit more. And then whoever begins speaking, I'll start the timer for you both.
I think Jonathan still has his 2 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. I do.
My bad, Jonathan.
I'm sorry. My bad. Sorry. I got that up. Right. Okay, Emery. My thing with Lions for Lambs is I felt like this movie's tried too hard to try to be like an Oscar baity movie with topics around that time, around 2007 with the Iran War. And basically, I think it was trying be more thought-provoking drama. It's kind of like around the point even. I imagine like even if Aaron Sorkin wrote this movie, I think it's more weightier, more real a lot that I felt like this one is basically you're talking a stage was being a stage basically. It feels like a play, but not in more of an interesting way as a play. And I felt Cruise, even the third in the movie, I felt like it was basically try too hard to be in that because even Cruise performance is more dramatic stuff, basically more a little bit weightiness to it, and even elevates the basically impression of the film. In American Made though, although look wise maybe just a little bit more, except for maybe for the hair, Cruise itself, it actually helps him win the movie. It was during a period when Cruise was basically way action period. Like outside like Top Gun Maverick, basically, this is like maybe the best acting performance when we show Tom Cruise as the actor basically had to act through the movie where you take all the stunts and bravado along with it. So I think you kind of just made American Made basically to try to be more look was real or not. That's kind of most movies when we try to do true stories along with it. Even it's directed by like Doug Liman, basically who worked excellent well with Edge of Tomorrow, basically brings like more a little dynamic costume when you're smuggling drugs throughout plane to plane and place to place, and even shows some moments. Even he was recording some during his smuggle bus, even sort of video diaries of it. It really shows you we love Tom Cruise and more fun, but people forget he's a very damn good actor along with it. So I think you kind of a little dismissive about the movie. For me, with Lions for Lambs, it just felt like try to be more like too Oscar baity and basically not be trying to do what the movie's trying to do. It basically tries too hard with it. I can see my time.
All right, and with that being said, now is whenever opponent begins speaking, I'll begin the timer.
I'll let you go first, John.
Okay. So here's the thing with American Made. I saw this movie in theaters with my dad, basically, and where I'm experiencing it did. And I was really impressed with the movie, though, basically. It kind of shows you with Cruise, he's still got his range as an actor. Like, imagine, outside of Maverick in the last couple of years, this is showing a Tom Cruise movie that you use the actor Tom Cruise, basically. It's outside the stunts for it for once, though. It's been a long while since they've done it, since like the 90s or the early 2000s. And it really shows you in that film, basically, sort of his how to get his sort of range together, basically, how the money after he smuggles, basically, sort of his brother in law basically messed up one of it, and accidentally when a car bombing right here was supposed to be to him. Even his emotion just felt distraught about it, basically, knew what to do. His hustling along with it, and basically, sort of the end of the movie, so might not spoil along with it, when he gets murdered, basically, in the film. And it's like in more shock. I thought, oh, he's going to get out of it. Turned out it's not, basically. It just really shows you nothing gets away with it, basically. I thought the movie itself, it really brings like more variety to it, basically, doing the places. And where Doug Liman shoot the movie. If I found my film with Lions for Lambs, just never felt anything to that, though.
See, I recently rewatched the movie for this match too, and I just kind of felt like it was just basically one note in a way. Like he might be the best part of American Made, but his performance didn't elevate anything else in this movie. Whereas I feel like his range of emotions, from the passion to the anger and just the pridefulness of what his action is or what he wants to achieve, like it really put his scenes above anything else in that movie.
See, you mentioned the character American Made is a bit one note. I'm basically putting the similar thing with Lawrence from Alliance. It's like he's basically a military guy, and that's it. Nothing else. This movie tries too hard. Basically, it's trying to be more of an Aaron Sorkin. It wrote this movie, but it turns out it didn't, and it really shows on it. And it tried to be very preachy in some instances. And even with Tom Cruise tried, but it just didn't feel. It didn't feel like it didn't add anything to it throughout his performance, and that's the reason why I consider it sort of his worst performance. But at least for American Made, like I mentioned earlier, at least he added something very vibrant. The movie would have been sort of nothing without his vibrant performance, and we all forget that basically how talented of an actor he is. If you take all the stunts and facade, it really elevates the story along with it. Basically, I mentioned about the recordings. Basically, was sort of is documented, and basically just when we went with the FBI or CIA, basically helping source some of the drug busts.
But I also just feel like with American Made, like you could have pretty much put anybody else with that level of charisma in that movie, and I don't think that movie would have been any different. Whereas I feel like if you had put anybody else in the Tom Cruise role in Lions for Lambs, it would either come off as like too much and I think more Oscar baity, or it would be kind of one note and bland.
You mentioned replace actor. You play my role was for Lance. It's really any actor was replaceable, like a Brad Pitt or George Clooney. Basically, if you put in that Tom Cruise spot, it wouldn't have been more than much a difference. It's just nothing with that performance. Well, at least yours, American Made, it has something to do with his performance. It elevates it. For my movie, it doesn't.
All right, gentlemen, that'll be the open debate. I believe it's back over to you, Zach, for your 1 minute closing whenever you begin speaking.
So Again, I'm going to use the word charisma, and I feel like Tom Cruise's worst performance is American Made, only because I feel like it's just his charisma and nothing deeper. Whereas I feel with Lions for Lambs, he's only in it like a third, like I said, but his passion and his presence elevates his sections of the movie. And even, like I said, even if you don't agree with ultimately what he is talking about, you are drawn in by the passion that you just really want to listen to what he says and just be engrossed in his presence.
All right, that's going to be your time for right now. Jonathan, we're going to go right over to you for your 1 minute closing argument whenever you begin speaking.
My closing is this: basically, the film, I felt like after I watched it would just kind of waste my time with it. It basically just felt just nothing and just come out as a bit panderous. Basically, just felt like it was nothing. They tried too hard, basically, when it does with the time around 2007, and basically Cruise performance. You could put any actor in that part and basically did maybe way better than Cruise did in that movie. With American Made, even said the charisma factor, he has a lot of charisma in that movie. He just really brings like a more energy, more up in your energy, basically, when he's smuggling the coke throughout the country. So basically, he just brings the charisma he needed throughout that movie, though. Like, you imagine any actor could have done it. I don't think that actor, that magnitude, that star with Tom Cruise, would have kind of done it better than the way he did in that movie. With me, from Lines for Lambs, it just brings nothing to it. It just bring like a thankless. Well, it's more like a cameo scene in the film. It just remote into nothing. It just found like, why am I listening to this again? It just felt like just more pointless of a performance and one of his least efforts.
And that will be your time. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your arguments. I'm going to drop you to the back as I bring in our judges. I believe I think it was Maria first, and then Alejandro, and then Jake Tato. So, Maria, we're going to go over to you. Who's going to get the point for you and why?
This time, it's going to be Zach. I thought he made some really good points on the American Made. His charisma. Tom Cruise's charisma gets him through anything. It doesn't mean it's a good movie. So I think he really nailed it when he was talking about how, that I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. There's stuff going on outside with the power. We don't have any power, so I forgot. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, he did a better job of arguing about his movie, and the Lion to Lamb thing. His arguments were really good about that. So I went with Zachary.
All right. That being said, we're going to go right back over to Alejandro. You get your
I
point.
have the exact same reasoning as Maria. I think Zach did a great job at selling the movie and not necessarily the performance, even though he did say like he's the best part of the movie, but it doesn't elevate anything else. I'm sitting here thinking, what else is he supposed to elevate if not the movie? So Jonathan's actually going to get my point. So they're like the opposite of what happened in the last round. I think Zach just tripped over himself and Jonathan jumped on top of it.
All right. And that being said, we're going to right over to you, Jake. Who gets your point and why? Who's holding it?
Yeah, Peck gets it here for saying that Tom Cruise's charisma is more necessary in American Made, whereas it's not needed in Lions and Lambs.
All right. Thank you very much. And
We're
with
going to
that,
sudden death, ladies and gentlemen.
we're going to the sudden death, just as he said. We're going to go to the blind round. I hope you gentlemen are ready, because I'm not.
I will say, this is my first ever one.
Really?
This should be a fun one.
Second one.
Give me 1 second. Sorry about this. All right. For those who don't know, we have a blind round. And that happens if there's a tie such as this one. And players are going to choose some pre-selected topics based on minimal information. It's going to be a very general question. And after that, they're going to give another specific set of questions that they're going to need to debate based off of the answer for the previous question that was given. It's going to be the same time frame as before, so 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and then another minute. But they're not going to have hardly any preparation beforehand, maybe about 5-10 minutes, whoever decides. So for you guys watching, it's going to be a couple seconds. For us here, it might be a couple minutes. That being said, gentlemen, are you ready?
Let's do it.
That's it.
All right. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to ask you guys not to answer until I finish saying the choices. So the blind round question, general question, is going to be pick one of the following 4 directors: David Ayer, Michael Bay, Gabriel Muccino, I don't know, or Barry Sonnenfeld.
Should I say my name first, or should I pick it?
You guys can answer whatever.
Jonathan. Barry Sonnenfeld.
Okay.
And I'll go with what was his choice again? Sorry.
His
I
choice
picked
was
Barry
Barry
Sonnenfeld.
Okay. I'll go with Michael Bay.
All right. That being said, your blind round question is: which of the listed directors made the best overall work with Will Smith? All right. So, again, like I said, for everyone watching, it's going to be in a couple seconds. For us, it might be a couple minutes here. We'll see you in a little bit. And we are back with the movie Battleground. We are now entering the blind round, which is going to be a great, interesting match. The question was, which of the listed directors made the best overall work with Will Smith? And these gentlemen have their answers. And that being said, we're going to let them argue it. And Jonathan, you're going to go first, since you answered first, and you're going to have a minute on the clock whenever you begin speaking.
So basically, I picked Barry Sonnenfeld because it's simple reason. He started right out of the gate with the first 2 as fan advantage when he started as a director. Then after that, he followed that up with Get Shorty along with it. But when he was tackled to direct Men in Black, not only put up his best overall movie as a director, but I will argue he never got that far out of that peak ever since working together with Will Smith. Because not only Sonnenfeld's direction, his depth direction, blend the sci-fi world into New York City around with it, but it blends it together. And not only Will Smith's always great charisma in the movie, but also brings like a little bit more weightiness of the secret organization around New York to hunt down aliens or basically be a service to it along with it. It brings like a great bend of comedy to it. It would basically blends it very well though, and that's a really smart, great job by a director can do by Barry Sonnenfeld what he did with this movie with Only Men in Black along with it, and basically put off his sort of his not only his best work, best Will Smith before, also best work as a director.
All right, and that will be your time. We're going to go over to Zach. Zach, you get 1 minute on the clock whenever you begin speaking.
So the person I chose, who I think has the best work with Will Smith, is Michael Bay. So Michael Bay worked with Will Smith on both of the Bad Boys movies. And I think what really makes him the best choice is because he was able to bring out Will Smith in a way to more eyes in at the movies. he was coming off Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, so you were able to bring more of that comedic nature with Will Smith into Bad Boys. And there are two other reasons, and I'll get to them in my 2 minutes. So I see the rest of my time.
All right, that's going to be your time. Jonathan, right back over to you for your 2 minutes whenever you begin speaking.
So the reason why Barry Sonnenfeld made his best movie with Will Smith with Men in Black is he basically turned out from when he learned from as a cinematographer from the Coen Brothers, and not only brained out in this Gucci cookie world of New York is surrounded by aliens and basically the secret organization with the Men in Black. Basically, not only brings a little depth and levity to it, and it shows a promise a director can be, which I will argue he never got that depth again with the first Men in Black ever again, because he does such a perfect benign job of basically bringing the great blend of the two worlds together, and plus with great makeup effects. Plus, on top of that, all of that, you got Will Smith as the sort of the cherry on top of it, and it does a great job of directing him very much a very sort of an outsider based on this is world along with it, sort of like the sort of a good cop backup situation, basically with him and Tommy Lee Jones. So I think Sonnenfeld did an excellent job with this film and bring out the great relaxed and a little more quirky world and nature of it, but surprisingly grounded throughout the movie. I felt like with Bad Boys with Michael Bay, though, I would argue that basically is not even sort of the best directorial work that Michael Bay's ever done. Even you mentioned the first with Bad Boys, that was his first directorial debut. He was low on budget when he did it, so he will get better as a director after all with The Rock and Armageddon and even with Ambulance. But I think he will get better with other movies, even outside of Will Smith, because that was the early stage of his career. With my pick, though, with Barry Sonnenfeld, it brings like not only really at top of his game, and not only Will Smith at the top of his game, but elevated and they peaked around that point with the first Men in Black movie. It brings like a great scope of the film. It brings some major level of stakes to it. It brings more tension, action, comedy, and but surprisingly a little bit calmness along with it, embracing it like a sort of like happy go along with it. Basically, we can feel good about it in the theater. I felt with Bad Boys, it's sort of like first start up of a project, but it's still got a lot better to go. Not the best, but a little bit more better to go. Felt like with Michael Bay compared to Barry Sonnenfeld, I thought he put his best work with Will Smith, and I can see my time.
All right, and that will be your time, Jonathan. 2 minutes over to you, Zach, whenever you begin speaking.
So, along with bringing the comedy that Will Smith already had from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, let's talk about bringing the action star out of Will Smith. If you didn't have Bad Boys, would we have action classics for Will Smith like Independence Day or even your choice, Men in Black? I don't think so. And because Michael Bay was able to show a different side of Will Smith than we had actually seen before. And this is another reason. We always think of Will Smith as like a hunk and a heartthrob. Well, who was the first to show that? Bad Boys with Will Smith's shirt off. It's like that appealed to a lot of women. But the other thing I will say is, yes, you heavily talk about the first Men in Black, but I feel like it's kind of like Jack Sparrow in a way. The first one is what he's like big with, but you still had two other movies that weren't as well received that Will Smith also did in the Men in Black franchise. And I just feel like he was with the same director. Will Smith was never able to elevate that first movie with the sequels. And I see the rest of my time.
All right, we'll just let the timer tick on down. When I pause it, whoever begins speaking first I'll start the 4-minute open debate. So give 1 second. All right. That being said, anyone who begins speaking, I'll start the timer.
So look at the question again. It said, "What directors that were listed basically their best work with Will Smith?" We're not talking about multiple movies. We're talking about their best work with Will Smith. So basically, and I'm point I'm trying to say with Men in Black with Barry Sonnenfeld is like Sonnenfeld brings a like more like grounded, not say grounded nature, but brings like quirkiness to it, brings a little air to it. We never seen like a director before that says Tim Burton, and brings it like when great variety of with New York and basically with the aliens and basically with Will Smith elevated along with it. So I mentioned he never got with Pete to do it. He brought sort of his best work as a filmmaker, sort of coming all together. And people thought in the 90s, well, we seen this as more like a more next stylistic director, even though he never got that more that peaked around that point. I felt he was showing like a great promise to show that sort of his best work along with Will Smith when brings in with Men in Black. With Bad Boys, I say it again, this is sort of starting out to it. This is not our sort of our best Michael Bay movie, basically. This is the best with the Rock and Armageddon, and basically even with Will Smith though, like even when we added in the sequels, it was just meant with Bad Boys 2, basically like more doubled down on it and basically got regressively worse on that. So basically, it was not even sort of the best in their working relationship at all.
See,
And also,
I was going to say,
again, Jonathan, watch the time.
Yeah, I was also looking at the question, and you say best overall work, and there's even one Barry Sonnenfeld Will Smith movie that you didn't mention, and it's critically panned as a bomb, and that is Wild Wild West. It's like if that is the one of the connections with your director and your lead, it's like I don't know if you really want to be associated with that, but when you're talking about overall work, you have to bring in everything and not just the peak. But like I said, if it wasn't for Bad Boys, would we even see how great Will Smith is in Men in Black?
well, here's the thing, though. That's not part of the question. And I know you mentioned about Wild Wild West, though. That's more of a studio thing. That's not fully on Barry Sonnenfeld, though, when he was making that movie, though. I want to add that to that because the reason I point this out there because it was not even sort of the best work from Michael Bay. Basically, that was his early on as a director. That was his first feature film, and the film was along with it was a low budget. So basically, he had to work on sort of the scraps when he did it. With Sonnenfeld, though, even if you would take like Wild Wild West into consideration afterwards, he is actually yeah, I made two sequels to Men in Black, which although it's not better than the first, at least with the third one specifically, even more underrated. There's some great moments in the film, basically, especially with Agent J, basically got to go back in time and save his partner, and after he does all that, he's sort of like briefly wow, knowing sort of his father was killed in that timeline, and basically after that, younger K basically sort of like the pseudo father figure to it, and is more realizing and more in emotions along with it. And also, plus, again, an underrated villain, basically by Jimmy Commit in the third. And even like speaking back to the first one for a second, he has sort of a great villain with Hector the Bugman by Vincent D'Onofrio. It took certain directors to bring that little performance off and basically bring that conviction. Well, it won't have worked at all while Sonnenfeld's direction throughout that movie.
Well, and the one other thing I'll just add is when you even look at like the IMDb, like the top action movies of the 90s, Bad Boys is actually ranked higher, like is ranked at 16, while Men in Black is ranked at 23. So it just shows all that Michael Bay was able to bring out of Will Smith to make him the start of his action career.
All right, and that will be your 4-minute debate. I believe it was Jonathan first.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, you have your 1 minute closing debate whenever you begin speaking.
Michael Bay did not make Will Smith a star. Will Smith made a star at Michael Bay. That was his first early directorial film. Say they went Martin Lawrence. And basically, even with Bad Boys 2, with plus with actually with a bigger budget, I don't think it's sort of their best works for either occasions. But with Barry Sonnenfeld, though, yeah, you can put out Wild Wild West. Like I mentioned earlier, that was not fully his movie. That's more of a studio mandate movie. Basically, he reluctantly had to do it. So even with Show Project, we doesn't have that. Even with show with the Men in Black series in general, it brings like a best creativity and not only great makeup work, basically, we rarely does a movie sometimes, and basically it's a scope of, like I mentioned, aliens around Manhattan. It basically brings like a great secret organization within the Men in Black. It took like a great scope of director, showing their best work, bringing that scope to it, and plus add the cherry on top of Will Smith's performance along with it. Sonnenfeld, yeah, Bad Boys might have started the action, but this movie solidifies basically the Will Smith and Mr. 4th of July box office for a reason. And that is the reason why, if you want to make best overall work throughout the film, I think that's
I'm sorry about that. That's time. That's time. My bad.
Oh.
I got a little distracted there.
Oh, okay.
Zach, I will give you your 2 seconds whenever you begin speaking.
So, I guess Jonathan and I looked at this question differently, because for me, best overall work, necessarily more does not mean best. And to me, I feel like the 2 Bad Boys movies that Michael Bay did with Will Smith was able to kind of bring Will Smith out of his shell a little bit. You were able to see a hunky, like bring out the hunk in Will Smith. You were able to bring out the comedic chops that he showed in Fresh Prince to a wider audience. And you were able to bring out a different side of the action side of Will Smith, which led to movies like Independence Day and Men in Black. And that's what made him the top action star of 4th of July weekend. So without Bay, you wouldn't have those movies.
And that's your time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was a great match. We'll see what the overall thought is by adding back our judges. And I think it's going to go like this.
Oh, shit. I forgot I have to go first. All right.
Oh, no. With that being said, Alejandro, it's going to be up to you. Who gets the point and why?
Ah, man, this one was really close. Both of these answers are great, and both arguments presented were absolutely phenomenal. Like a great final question. A fantastic way to end this match. I hate being in this position that I have to actually pick one, but ultimately I did end up going with Zach. I think the concept of Michael Bay utilizing the naturally funny without being a comedy style of Will Smith and creating the action star and using the sex appeal to make him an icon for women and men. Let's be real, it's 2023. And also, I think, once again, Jonathan just kind of stumbled backwards a little bit, saying that like Will Smith made Michael Bay, but Bad Boys did start the action career of Will Smith. Like, it was just a lot of backtracking that ultimately tipped me to Zach's side.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tater. We're going to go down to you. Who gets the point and why?
Peck for me. Great argument on both parts. But Jonathan laid out that Men in Black is both Barry Sonnenfeld and Will Smith's best. And then I also want to throw out that this question often comes down to work or works or the semantics, and I kind of love that, honestly. So it's like you pick the argument that did best either which way, and I dig that. Sorry. But yeah, the New York sci-fi aspect, overall, Peck did the job of painting why Men in Black is the best overall work.
All right, thank you very much. And that means, Maria, we're going to go down to you for your final vote. Who gets the point and why?
They both did good. They both were convincing. Can you hear me okay? Am I breaking up?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
I have to go this way. Oh, God. Mighty.
The leprechaun.
Like, I'm going to have to kill myself. That's what I have picked out. Zachary I thought he had a good point about Wild Wild West. You can't escape that. I mean, I'm sorry. He didn't want to talk about that, and Jonathan blamed it on the studio. I'm like, come on. Some of that's decisions that were really horrible. So, yeah, Jonathan, I thought that Jonathan did well, but Zachary edged it over for me.
All right, thank you, judges, all for your consideration. Because your winner with a final score of 3-2, Zach Shelton. Zach, how are you feeling tonight, buddy?
I can understand why people are hesitant about that blind round now. Being in it now for the first time, it's like that was a little nerve-wracking, but I thought overall it was a very back and forth match, great match. Just want to say good job to Jonathan. He really brought it.
That win, though, you're giving yourself a chance to qualify for the 2023 Battleground tournament. I gave some misinformation out earlier in the match. Your spot is not secured yet, as you'll need some other results to go your way. I'm honestly not sure what those results are. Aaron will, but we'll see. But if the opportunity arises, would you be interested in taking place?
Yes, I'm always up for seeing how well I did, and hopefully I can do better than the last time I was in a tournament. And yeah, it wasn't pretty. Let's put it at that.
Is there anyone you would like to see or play in the tournament, or
See,
not see, but that you would personally like to play?
See, that's the thing. I don't have a specific person because there's so many competitors I would like to debate. So for that, and the main thing I wanted to do tonight was I wanted to win and get back to 500 because it was looking shaky there with my record for a while. So,
well, you're certainly there now with the record of 3-3 and one knockout. You're back to 500. You're back on even playing ground. So, hopefully, we'll see you in the tournament. Thank you very much, Zach.
Thank you.
And tonight, with his unfortunate loss, we're going to go right over to Mr. Jonathan Peck, the phenomenal. And Jonathan, how are you feeling about your performance tonight?
That's close. That's close to being over 500. That's close.
Yeah, it was. It was a very, very, very close match. A lot of the rounds, the judges were split decision. It even went to a blind round. So, you did something right.
Yeah. Like I said, some of my losses are one score possessions, but it's not sort of excuse what my record is, but it's still, I always had something that close, but not that close enough.
Yeah. Well, with you not making the cut for the tournament, unfortunately, this year, for the remainder of the 2023, you can only just play to win and just kind of set yourself up for the future. Is there anyone in particular you would like to see, or you'd like to personally play next?
I don't know. This guy is maybe still in the tournament. If he does in the tournament, though, even let's just say he gets eliminated from that tournament, I want to Mr. Papa West, if he even wants to wake up from his Philly slumber, and I want to have an old-fashioned brawl, basically.
Well, that would definitely be interesting to see, and who knows? It might end up happening. So, thank you again, Jonathan. I know losses are hard to take, but keep your head up because it went to the blind round. It was very close. So, thank you again. We'll set you to the back, but that's not all. Battleground is always having some really interesting matches going on, and one of them includes me. So definitely watch out. This upcoming Friday, check out myself in a #1 contenders match versus the returning former champion Joe Hot Fuzz Fairley. And as someone who was in it, I can personally say it was a very good match. I won't give any spoilers. Go ahead and check it out. And thank you all for being here. And with that said, leave a like, subscribe, and have a good night. Thank you.